Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are looking at the latest zombie release, Firebase Z. Announced on January 14th, 2021, Firebase Z is the next chapter of the Dark Ether storyline. Following the destruction of Project Endstation, Requiem has been on the hunt for Omega Group. Thankfully, Samantha has given us new intel. Outpost 25, hidden deep in the jungles of Vietnam. But, on a stealth mission on her own, she gets captured. Our motives then switch. We are to infill and rescue Sam safe and sound. With that, let's be welcome to the jungle, fire the Ray K-84, and get spooked by the Russian Mangler in Firebase Z. Before we get into the full map, I want to talk about what has changed in the period between Die Maschine and the launch of Season 1. There has been a lot of things added to zombies, and I think that we should cover it all. So let's start with the Salvage System. Now, in my Die Maschine review, I praised how effective the attachments to help get salvage were, but criticized how infrequent its drop rates were. Well, through an update, Treyarch has retroactively fixed the system by granting players salvage and milestone rounds. Each milestone round, the value of the salvage goes up, so you are never technically low on salvage. This also helps the high round problem of not having enough green drop for you to get anything if you bleed out. Changes were made to the self-revive system. Now, the game can no longer drop self-revives if you already have one. If a player doesn't have armor in the game, the armored zombie will drop the armor jacket instead of an armor plate. 3 new Scorestreaks were added to the crafting table: the cruise missile, the artillery strike, and the napalm strike. Sadly, the napalm and artillery don't have an iPad to use them. You actually mark it with a circle akin to the dragon strike from Garrod Krovi. Through the launch of Season 1 and Season 1 Reloaded, 5 new weapons were added to zombies: the MAC-10 submachine gun, the Groza heavy assault rifle, the Street Sweeper shotgun, the Sledgehammer melee weapon, and the Wakizashi melee weapon. These can all be customized, well, the guns anyways. Thanks to an update after the launch of Firebase Z, the camo requirement for elite eliminations was changed, allowing for the inclusion of the Mimic and the Russian Mangler, as well as Orda counting as 3 ticks of progression for the camo. As someone who completed Dark Ether before this, it is a much welcome change. With Season 1 Reloaded, the fan, well, maybe not favorite, but it's something, perk Tombstone returned. This perk, like all the others, has 3 abilities to obtain using the Ethereum crystals earned in-game. In its base form, upon going down, you enter a shadow form. You have 30 seconds to revive yourself, or one of your teammates to revive you, otherwise you bleed out. Level 1 allows you to regen health, Level 2 extends the timer to 60 seconds, and Level 3 returns Tombstone to its original form. When you bleed out, you drop a Tombstone. However, when you come back to life, you have to pay all of your points to obtain your guns and salvage. I guess a small trade-off for a return to grace. 2 new game modes were added to zombies across Season 1, Jingle Hells and Cranked. Both are a little lackluster, but we can just move on from that. Across both Firebase Z and Die Maschine in Season 1, 96 pieces of intel were added to zombies, pushing the story even further forward. With all of these changes, we can finally jump into what I like about Firebase Z. Let's start where the map starts, the infill sequence. Similar to the sequence in Cartel from Cold War's multiplayer, you arrive in a jeep and get out and start the map. Not only are you joined by Weaver and our cast of Strauss, Gray, and Carver, you are also introduced to a new character, Ravenov, a member of Omega Group who gave Samantha all of her intel on Outpost 25. As you move through the village, you reach the LEGO Dimensions portal to Outpost 25. Built on top of Firebase Ripcord, an old American base, seen in the campaign for like 2.5 seconds, you are then introduced to the main antagonist of this map, Dr. William Peck, an American scientist and egotistical maniac who fled the US to help Omega Group with their studies in the Dark Ether. Let's put a pause on the story talk and move to the gameplay side of things. The progression of this map is super easy, and the transitions between sections of the map is super smooth. It's like Moon in a sense. You start in a smaller area with little to nothing going on, and then move to a larger base area to get access to everything you were missing. After arriving, you have 3 possible paths to turn on the power generators. The ether reactors are super fun changes to the power switch formula. They are regional power areas a la Origins, but instead you must kill to charge them up. Upon finishing, you get power for that area. Upon turning all 3 of the ether reactors on, Pack-a-Punch and the Wonder Fizz turn on, which is great because both Deadshot and Elemental Pop are missing their machines on this map. Thankfully, just like Die Maschine, there are several areas to train on this map. You can chill in the village, the helipad, the motor pool. Do you want to camp? You can do that too. There are several spots to camp, like the OPC or even the Colonel's office if you're feeling a bit risky. My next point, and this is a huge quality of life feature, there are several of both Manny the Mannequin and crafting tables around the map, and it helps so that way you don't overcrowd one spot like the particle accelerator on Die Maschine. Now, let's move on to one of my favorite new features of this map, the defense rounds. During the periods before an exfil round, a Dark Ether breach will appear, and it will be up to our fire team to stop the zombie horde from destroying the base's computers. At said stations, there are lanes that the players can defend with a Scorestreak terminal that gives a cruise missile, a napalm strike, and an artillery strike, respectively. The reappearance of the Russian Mangler and the new enemy, the Mimic. The Mangler, as everybody knows, was from Gorod Krovi and makes its triumphant return in Firebase Z. He works the exact same way, and his energy blast can no longer follow the player around corners. And he is actually weak to the napalm blast ammo type, funny enough. So Deadwire is no longer the best AAT objectively to use. Now, the Mimics, on the other hand, these tricky bastards are a different story. Hidden in plain sight, the Mimics can hide as everyday objects. They can be fake salvage, a score streak on the floor, even the actual wall or floor. They will transform and Freddy Freaker jump scare you. They also have tentacles that they can pull you in and chomp you. However, like the Crimson Nosferatu from Dead of the Night, after biting you, not only do the zombies ignore you for a few seconds, but also it throws you backwards so that way you don't get surrounded by the zombies when they drop you. The boss of this map as well, the Orda. This is an elder god, one of the primordial beings from the Dark Ether. This son of a bitch takes a lot to kill, but it does feel very good when you finally do it. He has several attacks and is the boss you fight from round 30 onwards during said defense rounds. Before we get to the wonder weapon, let's talk wall selection. A common criticism of the previous entries is that the maps never varied what guns were found on the wall. This map seeks to change that. With new additions like the Purple Bullfrog or Blue Howler, some do return from D Machina like the Gallo SA-12 and M16, but it is nice to see new faces. Okay, now let's get to one of my favorite parts of the map, the Ray K-84. The Ray K was built by Dr. Kukle at Outpost 25, and it was based off of the GKZ-45 Mark III, or more commonly known as the Raygun Mark III to the community, from everyone's favorite, Gorod Krovi. The Ray K is a slow-firing automatic assault rifle built with a Soviet quick-dot sight and has an underbarrel grenade launcher that acts similar to the Raygun Mark III in that, when it hits the ground, zombies near it take little damage and get slowed down. But shoot it a few times and, well, how about I let young boy Anakin explain it for me?
And they blow you up. Boom!
The side quest to get this wonder weapon is super easy and takes little to no time at all to do. First, you get Kukle's eye from his corpse at the Scorched Defense. Use it to open his PC and get a locker key. Open the lockers in the bunker to kill the Mimic to get the barrel. Use the PC to find the 3 parts of a dartboard you have to shoot. And then kill a Mangler to collect and charge the ammo container you get, and then you can build the Ray K. Before we get into the largest chunk of this, let's talk side quests. There are several on this map, giving the player several things to do. You can get Sergey'S Head for a free perk, the next evolution of the Coffin Egg from D Machina. You can get down and play DDR on the jump pads and have them be free for the rest of your game. And my personal favorite, the return of the upgradable monkey bombs from Gorod Krovi. Treyarch, do you want to talk about it? With all of those quests, we can dig into the main quest and story for this map. Most of this is what I've myself pieced together. However, I'd like to shout out Eric Maynard and Caljitsu on Twitter for being absolute champs and piecing a lot of the story for us to absorb. Their videos and stuff on Twitter has definitely been a big help. With that out of the way, let's dive into the Easter egg for this map. With Ravenov's keycard, we open up lockers to find chemicals to make a truth serum Omega had used on its Ethernauts. Once we mix the chemicals, we pump it into Peck's room and get him talking. We find out we need to use Pokeballs, or essence traps, to catch mimics and find the memories of Dr. Sokolov, Dr. Brahms, and Dr. Zabin. Once retrieved, we get the codes to open the OPC, Omega Portal Chamber, and Sam's dimensional ID tag to find her in the Dark Ether. We get a floppy disk and plug it into a terminal to open the OPC. We begin to open the Dark Ether portal, but it shuts down. We talk to Peck, and he says we need to overload the ether reactors with Ethereum crystals. Thankfully, some miners have hidden containers to sell on the black market, and Ravenov points us to a radiation detector to find them. We find 3 and plug them in, however it overheats the system entirely. Peck tells us that he lied because the truth serum wore off. Weaver reaches out to Grey Strauss Carver, depending on who's in your game, and you summon Requiem's fucking space laser to power the OPC. You open the portal and an IGC begins to play. Sam steps out of the portal and recognizes our group. We escape the facility and get picked up by Ravenov in an APC. However, Mommy Orda has something to say about us leaving. But Ravenov has something to say before we go in.
Are you fucking kidding me?
You fight Orda and the thousands of zombies stopping you from leaving. After that, you hop back into APC and leave. Raptor 1 prepares to exfil, and Sam has a little talk with Ravenov. Ravenov hints at a mission in the Ural Mountains, and Sam tells Weaver that they have a lot to talk about. We cut back to Peck being rescued by Dr. Valentina. She tells him that he proved his loyalty, but the Colonel wants to see more. Lev Kravchenko then walks through the door, revealing what most of us knew all along. But he asks Peck, which is your better eye? I love this main quest. There isn't any step that is extremely difficult, and the quest is so much fun to run through. My favorite step has to be obtaining the ether crystals to power the generators. I love steps that make you work to complete something because it feels more rewarding in the long run. Now, let's talk the story of this map before, during, and after. Before this map, there's about 6 months' time between D Machina and Firebase Z. In that time, Omega Group has leaped forward in the Ethereum arms race against Requiem, thanks to Dr. Peck and his staff. The KGB has sent POWs to Outpost 25 for use as Ethernauts, as the KGB calls them. Pioneers on the frontier of science. They have excavated the Dark Ether for crystals, and that is how Omega Group has pulled so far ahead. Weaver and co. are worried that they may never be able to catch up, and then enters Samantha. She tells Weaver about Outpost 25 thanks to her informant, Ravenov. However, after Sam gets captured, Ravenov reaches out to Weaver and talks with him directly. Through the intel, we find out all about what Omega Group has done. We find out how the Mimic works, how they built the Ray K, and how far ahead they exactly are. My favorite piece of intel we get is why the zombies can't leave the zones they inhabit. The Ethereum energy around the place is like air to them. Wander too far away from it, and they'll just die. It locks us to these outbreak zones, and I love that. My favorite stories are ones that build worlds larger than what we play in, hence why I love the Chaos story and World War II zombies so much. And of course, as always, the final point, the Easter egg song. Lost by not Elena Sigmund or Clark S. Nova or Maluka, but Samantha herself, Julie Nathanson. This song is phenomenal and really plays with the feelings Samantha has been feeling since leaving the Ether storyline from Black Ops 4. It's a really emotional piece with a nice hook. As always, Kevin and co. knocked it out of the park. With all of that, we can get to the bad after the break. I titled this section differently because I don't genuinely dislike anything about this map. Does it have some problems? Yes, of course, but I think that Treyarch really hit it out of the park with this one. With that, let's delve into it. My first point is that the exfil system is... yikes. In D Machina, the exfil system always felt like a challenge, but in Firebase Z, it's a joke. There's usually only 35 zombies, with nay a sight of a special zombie. Next, I believe this is only an Xbox issue, so I can't confirm it on any other console, but I'd be ill to leave it out. When a player has their FOV higher than 80, which is default, textures misalign and certain VFX also misalign, causing some serious visual bugs. This can actually halt progression because some parts of the Easter egg can't be seen because of the misaligned textures. Next, after killing Orda, we hop back in the APC and drive off, except the road we drive on is the same road that Orda pops out of. How did it fix itself? Next up, the aspect ratio of said in-game cutscenes. This really bothers me because it makes him look super duper awkward. Okay, I'm gonna be real honest, this one is super nitpicky, but his name isn't Reznov, it's Ravenov. Just needed to clear that up. The lack of an intro cutscene really hurts this map in my eyes because we don't really get an understanding as to what's happening in between these maps. However, the argument could be made that if you just read the intel, but not everybody wants to do that. Next, the jump pads. A marvel on Horizon Duck, but absolutely useless on this map. I never find myself using them because to me, this map is really small, so it's way easier to just walk everywhere myself. And my final point, the boss fight. I don't have a problem with the fact that it's just Orda reused. My problem lies in that it's anticlimactic because it is over way too fast. Sure, there are a lot of zombies, but Orda just goes down way too fast. With that, let's wrap this video up. And that's all for Firebase Z. I genuinely love this map, and I'm still super excited for the rest of Cold War's life cycle. Before I end this off again, huge shout out to Eric Maynard and Caljitsu for their storyline stuff on Twitter and YouTube. And also thanks to @KRNG Ripley on Twitter and @CraftDAnimations and the League of Undead website for the wonderful renders that I used in the thumbnail. Go drop a follow and tell them that I sent you. With that, I'm all done. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.
Are you fucking kidding me?